Oh, yeah, yes, sorry. This is Rabbi Nagat.
Hi, so nice to meet you, Alex. Nice to meet you. Good to see you. My grandfather was part
All
of
of
this
the
temple
questions
many years
have
ago.
been created by them. So basically
Yeah.
asking
What was his name? His name was Mervyn Shore.
They're all
Sure, I know the name. I do know the name.
But it was many, it was like
I know
decades
the
and
last name.
decades.
No, we still read his name on the
so you can get back to the browns.
Wow, that's amazing.
I know that.
They do that forever unless
I
you tell
know,
them to
I know,
stop.
and
Wow.
Liz, but we do it.
Wow. Yeah. That's really great.
Yeah, I might talk about it today. He married.
and the questions that we're asking are coming from the Cecil Collective, Alpha Public Schools, Hobbies, and Valley Rising. So
I love that. I love that. It's fantastic. It's so cool.
My dad told me, I didn't actually know this, he told me last night that his great grandfather. Yeah.
That's cool.
thank you for being here.
You better watch it.
He's like this close.
Yeah, I'm telling you, right? That's great. I mean, I should be.
Yeah, so I'm the civic engagement.
Well, it's part of you. It's part of you. We're on to it. How's this going for you?
Good.
Is that a table? Do you have a table? Yeah. Should we sit this? Yeah, I was about to.
Of course. Oh, yes.
Hello, Alex.
Hey, how you doing?
Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Yes,
Appreciate
of
it.
course.
Did you meet Elisa and Noel?
I did meet Elisa and hi, Noel. Hi, nice to meet you.
They recognized you.
Want to know?
We randomly assigned the seats, so we can see that your seat is up there in the first seat. He is not joining us today. First hi, Guzman. He said that he had scheduled that he could not reschedule.
Bummer, I know it's a bit.
Yeah, since we rescheduled it. Yeah. To be fair, he never said that he would make it the first date that we scheduled, which was a long time ago that we first scheduled that, before we realized that it was Super Bowl Sunday. Clearly none of our group is football fans. It was actually Angelo who said, hey, by the way, that's Super Bowl Sunday. And I'm like, how did none of us catch that? Clearly not football fans.
It's not on the same day.
Yeah. Yeah, right there. Oh, that's a restaurant. Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and move back because Halloween one. Yes. Yeah, right there.
Hello, everyone. We're going to begin in a few moments. If you would not mind taking a seat, that'd be terrific. Then we'll start.
Let's make sure to sign in and then you can feel free to take some. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dana McAdam, the Senior Rabbi here at Temple Emanu-El, and it's my honor to welcome you. And Temple Emanu-El has been in this community for only about 170 years. So we're one of the oldest synagogues in California, and I think it's so important to be part of this incredible process as Americans, that we're part of the voting process. So I applaud all of you for being here. This is where we should be. Absolutely. The most important thing I can tell you is where the bathrooms are. So if you look at the back there, you'll see there's two of the bathrooms. The women's bathroom is the closest one. The door that's open is the men's bathroom. We have hot water, coffee, and cold water there. And if you'd like to hear this in Spanish, we have the ability back there as well. So if you go back there, you can get a recording in Spanish, or it's stated too. I think that's everything. So let's begin, shall we? Thank you all for being here.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Carmen Brammer, and I'm CEO and founder of Global Majority Consulting. So today's forum will consist of several questions that have come from listening campaigns and the work of our various organizations within the community. Each question will be posed to each candidate, and each candidate will be given 1 minute per question. We have a timekeeper, Gabby Gayton. Where's our timekeeper? Raise your hand. There you go. Who will alert you when you have 15 seconds remaining and when it is time to wrap up. We have randomly drawn your names to assign your seats today. The first question will be answered by the first seat, followed by the second, then the third. The second question will be answered first by the second seat, and the third, and the first, and so on. Each question asker will indicate who is to answer first. We will begin with your introductory statements. You each have 1 minute to answer, beginning with the first seat.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Alex Shore. I'm running for city council because, oh, we got a mic adjustment. I'm running for city council because I'm called to address housing and homelessness, which, in my opinion, and in many District 6 voters' opinion, is the issue of our time. And it is one we have to solve. It poses an existential threat to our city, because if we cannot house our people, we are not a community. And that is what I am all about. How do we build community in San Jose, a community where everyone feels welcome, where everyone belongs? I have been working toward that since I moved back to this area a decade ago, working for Santa Clara County Supervisor Ken Yeager, who represented this area for a long time. I've been involved in the Neighborhood Association, Shasta-Hanchett Park. I helped get a street renamed in San Jose, Barack Obama Boulevard, and I run a nonprofit called Catalyze Silicon Valley, which works to get the community more involved in the development process. I'm excited to be here with all of you today. Thanks for coming out.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angelo Cusciuti. On September 11th, 2001, I was a senior in high school. As the Twin Towers fell, I I saw the American ideas of empathy, respect, and decency were under attack. 3 weeks later, I joined the Marines. For 21 years, I served our country. I fought. I was wounded. And I watched friends give their lives in defense of those principles: empathy, respect, and decency. And now I've come home. But I've come home to a town that I no longer recognize. I see human suffering in the streets with homelessness. I watch crime go unchecked with the lack of accountable police officers. And I'm watching our environments choke while many of us can no longer afford to live in the city that we grew up in. I come home to also build teams of people united by a cause of collective good, working to shift to overcome our shared story. I've had the opportunity to knock over 11,000 doors. I've heard the conversations and the actions for accountability and accessibility, principles in which I was schooled. I've been called naive for believing in the power of unity, but I will not back down, nor will I apologize. Because if my career has taught me anything, it's the power of people coming together under the idea of empathy, respect, and decency.
So I want to make sure everybody sees me, so if you don't mind. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm not sure if anybody speaks Spanish, but if it's okay, I'd like to translate myself. Thank you. So I'll start in English first. My name is Olivia Navarro. First of all, thank you and welcome for coming today. It's an important election. For the first time in a long time, we have the opportunity to move this district forward. So my name is Olivia Navarro. I'm your candidate for San Jose City Council, and I'm also currently the District 6 Neighborhood Commissioner, where I was elected back in 2016 by majority vote on all the neighborhood associations to represent this district and review the budget of the City of San Jose for transportation, code enforcement, and public safety, as well as I ran Measure T, which is what repaved our streets and roads, the campaign, and I'm now sitting on the Oversight Committee. I'm running today because our city and our district needs a voice for working class families. I've been doing that for a long time, both in my professional and personal career, and I want to continue to serve in this district that I love. Thank you. I'm supposed to translate it. I'm so sorry. Ay, disculpa, se me pasó. Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Olivia Navarro. Soy la candidata corriendo para el Distrito 6. Actualmente también soy la comisionaria del Distrito 6, representando este distrito, enfocándonos en el presupuesto de la ciudad para seguridad, para calidad de vida, para también todo lo que se enfoca en las carreteras y mantenimiento. Yo tengo desde el 2006 que fue elegida con la mayoría de las asociaciones del Distrito 6 y ahora estoy corriendo para esa elección de el postularme para concejal. También me siento en la comisión de Measure T, que es la campaña que corrí yo. Actualmente estamos repavimentando todas las calles, la mayoría de las calles en el distrito y en San José, y también hizo los bomberos para que tengan más recursos, y abrimos una estación de bomberos por medio de la Lincoln y la Turner. Muchas gracias por estar aquí. Gracias.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gaby Gaitan, and I work with Amigos de Guadalupe. Amigos de Guadalupe is a non-profit organization. I've been working with them for almost 4 years. Housing is one of the most important issues in San Jose, so we will begin with a number of questions about housing. Last year, thousands of community members worked on an advocated for COPA, the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, and were devastated by the City Council rejection of this policy. The City Council then said they were committed to exploring preservation or acquisition avenues as a way of achievement, more affordable housing in our communities. So what kind of preservation policies will you champion or support? The second seat will answer.
Thank you so much for the question. So I look at housing when it comes to 3 models. I look at production, protection, and preservation/collaboration. So production understands that we need, our RENA requirements represent that we need 63,000 new units by 2031, of which we're well on our way to being able to continue. Second is the idea of protection. Inside of our community, what we is roughly 13,000 unoccupied homes inside the city of San Jose. I think exploring policies, to answer your question directly, exploring policies to incentivize homeowners to be able to ensure that their individual units are then occupied would allow a lot more chances of people to enter into the housing market inside the city. And the third portion of that is preservation and collaboration. When we bring our neighborhood associations to work together with individual nonprofits to work together with the city council, we have a unified voice from multi-angles to come together towards a collaborative model of governance. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I too believe in the 3P model. I'd like to continue also as a council member to explore the idea to bring COBA back, bringing in all the stakeholders at the same time. But the main thing that I want to focus on is preservation. That is the main thing. There are studies right now that if we preserve housing and keep people housed, that's what's going to keep them a year from now still have stability in their lives. So for me, that's the key. Finding out though, if $1 million worth investing in buying and acquiring a building is more feasible since it's taking us so long, as opposed to using the $1 million from getting people or preventing people to getting unhoused, is probably something that would be more interesting to me at this moment. But we can and we should do all of it. We need to develop more. We need to prevent people from becoming houseless in the first place. And we also need to have supportive services in the future after they become housed. Thank you. It's telling me to wrap it up.
I spent 8 years on the San Jose Housing and Community Development Commission, so I got to dig in really deeply on these issues and learn a lot. I am supportive of adding duplexes to our rent stabilization ordinance. We have about 10,000 duplexes in San Jose that are not rent stabilized, and I believe we should be doing more to protect renters in our city. I also support expanding the tenant protection ordinance, which keeps people from being kicked out of their home for no good reason. I've also been personally a donor to organizations that help people, especially nonprofits, be able to purchase housing and provide it affordably for community. And in this campaign, I've proposed an idea called an empty homes fee. We have about 4,400 homes sitting empty for no good reason in our city. They are there right now. We can bring people into those homes, new residents who are already here. We need that empty homes fee in our city to ensure we can house as many people as possible.
Hello, my name is Kim Wheeler. I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. We are a public service organization that has been around 111 years. And one of the things we do is participate in voting and election knowledge spread to all who need it. Given in 2023, Santa Clara County had the highest rate of evictions in all of California, 30% higher than in 2019. What policies will you support to keep our neighbors in their homes? The third seat will answer first.
First, thank you for all the work that you do. Growing up in a house until I was 9 years old, I thought that was our home. And then all of a sudden, we got told that the owner was going to sell the house and just abruptly move us. It shook me to my core because for me, that was all I ever knew. I can't imagine what our families are going through right now, especially the people, the seniors that are on fixed incomes, people with disabilities, and especially our children, our next generation. That is why I respectfully went to the realtors and SCORE and was the only candidate running for San Jose City Council that said I would not interview with them, and I did not seek their endorsement. Because for me, protecting renters is really important. I've felt it myself when I was a younger child, and it would be an utmost priority for me to continue to protect our renters in not only in the city of San Jose, but also advocating in the whole county. Thank you.
As a housing commissioner, I voted for the Just Cause ordinance that was eventually passed by the city to keep people in their home. I absolutely support Just Cause. I also support a right to counsel for individuals who are about to be evicted. We know, and I've actually been to the eviction courts in our city, and I've seen that a lot of landlords do have their lawyers present, and I think that's fine. I think those who are being evicted should have access to that counsel as well. I also have been championing, and some of you may be very happy to hear, that San Joseans in District 6 are very supportive of a new program at San Jose I've been supporting called eviction diversion, where if someone falls behind on their rent, the city will step in one time for those who they think can get back on their feet and pay that rent. And that is, I would estimate, a 75% cost savings for us as taxpayers versus someone becoming homeless and trying to get them housing thereafter. So we need these kinds of policies in place to keep working class folks in our city.
I think a lot of things in government have to strike a balance. And the idea that I look for is three models. First of all, striking a balance between all of the individual factions within the government itself. Production across every economic band is extremely important when we talk about our production model. A requirement or an increase in supply will ultimately lower the requirement for demand, therefore helping to bring prices down across the city. As a renter myself, who is subject to the potential increase every single year and the idea of the instability that it provides, the idea for being able to produce something meaningful in the requirement of an influx of economic viability, should I fall behind. I think that what I want to do is prevent people from becoming trapped in a cycle where they cannot advocate for themselves and where they feel stuck in a system that doesn't work for them. We continue to hemorrhage members of our community because they cannot afford to enter into our market itself, to include myself. What happens when my rent goes up and I can no longer afford to live in the city in which I engage in? Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Norma Calderon. I come from the parish of San Juan Vianney. I am from PAC. And my question is this. My husband and I have mixed immigration status. So whenever we seek help with housing, we are bouncing from the table to table without even getting to help we need. Do you support creating opportunity to undocumented people and families with a mixed immigration status to have access to affordable housing? Please, the seat number first can answer first.
My answer is absolutely. Absolutely. I want our undocumented community to continue to feel integrated with our community. At the organization I run, Catalyze SV, we worked really hard to bring the voices of those who traditionally have been left out of government decisions and the buildings that get built in our community to the process and to the decision making. I also support undocumented folks serving on San Jose commissions. I think they should have that right. And I also support undocumented folks being able to vote in city elections. I think that would bring folks who are already contributing to our system, often our economy, often our tax base. They live in this community too. Their children are growing up here. They should have a right to participate in our local elections.
My father is an immigrant to the United States. He's an Italian from the Puglia region. I watched the way that my father was treated as an immigrant coming into the United States, as watching my boyhood hero, because he spoke with an accent and because he had a stutter. The way that people treated him, based solely off the fact that he had those two ticks, if you will. I never forgot that. And so one of the things that I've been able to do inside of the military and inside of the federal service and back home is advocate for those who cannot advocate for themselves. I think that creating pathways towards citizenship is the exact right answer we need for our country. Right? I've worked with so many people from across many different walks of life who have worked to be able to earn their citizenship through service inside of the federal government. Inside of that same system here is something that we can work towards. Yes, I want to be able to continue to advocate for every single member of the community, and I will continue to champion that as my father taught me to do. Thank you.
So the answer is yes, and I've worked really hard at a young age to make sure that every single person, whether you're documented or not, if you're contributing to our society and if you're part of our neighborhoods, you also need to have housing. It is a right, not a privilege. And a lot of these families have children, and those children, like I shared earlier, I was displaced, so I can't even imagine what those kids are going through. I've seen many community members that then get pushed out of the area, but yet their parents are still working here. So if they're working and they're contributing their hard-earned, sweat off their own brow, they should have the opportunities and the, sorry, I read that I'm blind halfway there, opportunities just like anyone else. So yes, and to build on that, I've already been working on making sure that we advocate for our immigrant community to make sure that they have the services that they need, not just in housing, but across the board. Thank you.
Hello. Tenant preference policies require affordable housing property owners to make available a portion of their affordable apartments to people who already live in our community and are in need of an affordable housing. Do you support tenant preference policies as a tool against displacement? The second seat will answer.
I do. I think that's a fantastic idea and fantastic policy to prevent the undue burden caused from displacement due to economic viability. I also think that we can expand that and looking towards people who collaborate and work towards the government itself. So I would like to propose and continue on for the city council is if you are a public service employee for the city of San Jose and you work towards the collective good, then when we have access to opportunities for affordable housing, I want to bring our police officers, our firefighters, our city employees back to the city of San Jose. We already have models in place when it comes to tenant preference policies that we can do the same thing for those who pay into the system with their very lives. Thank you.
So the answer is yes. We need to make sure, and it's almost circling back to the last two questions, right? We need to make sure that we have the opportunity to keep the individuals that are currently housed, to make sure that it's affordable for everyone, not just some. And I laugh at the time because I hear affordable a lot, but who is it really affordable for? So we have to really be conscious about when we use that word, affordable. It needs to be for the regular working folks that are out there making the minimum wage earnings every day. And those are the ones, that's the backbone of what our city is made of. We have a haves and have-not disparity here in the city of San Jose. So to answer your question, yeah, I would look into that and try to see that we can broaden it up so that we can actually do more outreach with our nonprofit partners so that we can see how it would be implemented a little bit better, especially with people that have language barriers.
For me, Gabby, the answer would be yes. I have been used to spending hours studying as a housing commissioner these various issues, and I assume this one will come before the Housing Commission. So I'd want to study it further to understand all the policy implications, but my gut is yes. And I've seen through the work I do at Catalyze SV, the amount of affordable housing that the average person can afford. The true definition of affordable is different than the legal definition of affordable, because $126,000 is the area median income for a single person in this county in 2023. That is not truly affordable. So the work I've done at Catalyze SV is to try to encourage and urge developers to reduce that area median income so we're building housing for the people who are truly, truly in need of affordable housing in this community, because they are the ones who may be displaced from San Jose. And we want this to be a community where everyone can live.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Elizabeth. I'm a community organizer at Alpha Public Schools, which is a charter school located on the east side of San Jose. Many families in our community are struggling to pay rent and keep up with the high cost of living. Many have moved out of the area and are having to commute to keep their jobs and keep their children in good schools. What will you do to make housing more affordable for families so that they do not have to move out of San Jose? The third seat will answer first.
Thank you. I can answer with, we just talked about preventative housing. That's one. Trying to prevent people from becoming houseless in the first place. But especially in particular when you speak about children, it touches me to the core because those are the most impacted when you start dividing families and they don't get to see their parents because they're commuting every single day. The answer is developing more affordable housing and partnering to make sure that we get that done as quickly as possible. And opening up the doors so that everybody has access to it. Sometimes we have affordable housing developments that get put up, but then the application, by the time it opens up, there's not that many people that are locally here that have the same opportunity to be able to rent those said affordable housing units that are right in the same neighborhoods that they've been living in for a long time.
Elizabeth, thanks for the question. I'm a bit of a policy guy, so I'm going to be very specific. I already talked about eviction diversion a little bit. That is incredibly important for preventing homelessness in the first place and saving us tax dollars. The city of San Jose has an affordable housing policy where a developer can build the housing on-site as part of a market rate development or pay a fee and have it built off-site somewhere else at a different time. At Catalyze SV, our members and I generally support building the affordable housing on-site. It guarantees the housing gets built in an area and it integrates neighborhoods so that people who are different socioeconomically are literally living right next to each other. That is incredibly important for our city. I talked about the empty homes fee earlier. I support that money that's raised from the fee like they do in Vancouver, Canada, which I studied extensively. That money going toward building affordable housing. The city releases a notice of funding availability when they have money, and that money can go toward building affordable housing units. That's how we should help people stay in our community.
Thank you, Elizabeth. When I look at the systems inside of San Jose, I look at San Jose and District 6's ecosystem. What I want to understand and continue to require is that we work on collaboration with our developers, with our affordable housing neighbors, and the members of our community. Because right now what we can't do is vilify, and we need one another to be able to work towards a specific solution together. It goes back to the simple policy of production, protection, and preservation/collaboration. The same models ring true. If we continue to collaborate with developers to create more production models across the city, then we will undoubtedly lower the cost of living through production models themselves. At the same time, I can't punish developers for wanting to develop inside the city. I think the great idea of keeping in lieu fees, right, or ensuring that that money stays in that project itself. I think that a lot of models, ensuring that we have high production models inside of high density areas or where transit or mixed use zoning in our transit hubs is an exact right model to create a solid ecosystem for our families. Thank you.
Again. So we currently have many vacant office buildings in our downtown. Do you have a vision or long-term plans to transform them into mixed-use housing or affordable housing? The first seat will answer first.
Yeah, absolutely. At Catalyze SV, we advocate passionately for mixed use, and I've loved in this campaign talking with District 6 residents about the benefits of shops and services on the ground floor and having housing above it. I think we can do a lot more of that on major streets and near transit, like Meridian, Bascom, West San Carlos. Those are perfect places to be doing mixed use. In our next general plan, I support policies that make it easier to convert the empty office buildings we have into housing. And the empty homes fee that I talked about earlier, I suggest we create both incentives on the front end and policies that discourage empty buildings on the back end. There's one on Winchester and Heading in our district that is burned out, graffitied up, has been sitting there for a while, and I think that a property owner who sits on a building that's encouraging blight and could be bringing down property values, could be having someone in that building and bringing vibrancy to a neighborhood, I think we should be discouraging that with policies that charge empty buildings fees in our cities.
I think we have to run towards the problem, right? And so I think that the idea of looking right now, for instance, on San Carlos, right? So I got a chance to walk around the district a whole bunch. Right on San Carlos, there's an interesting development that the land is effectively been purchased and earmarked, but the cost of being able to develop that site itself has become too high, so it doesn't pencil out. Well, that ends up hurting the community, because what happens is when that developer can't actually develop that specific location, then that area falls into blight, and then people move into that, right? And then it becomes much harder to continue that, and it becomes a dredge on the community itself. I think that what we have the opportunity to do is continue with collaboration itself, right? There's in the Corey neighborhood, there's a development that's been proposed. It's like 15 stories, it has a whole bunch of units inside of it. I think it's a fantastic idea, but here's the challenge. Policy that's cut with a broadsword hurts everybody. We have to collaborate between the city, developers, and the neighborhoods to ensure that we have the right type model fit for the right type model neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I would definitely support building mixed-use development, especially when there's VTA and good transit accessibility. We also have to talk about making sure that we bring in developers to want to invest in the city of San Jose. Right now, it's a difficult challenge with some of the developers not wanting to make or take on that challenge. But I think having a relationship with good developers that are willing to make that investment in our city is really important. I think out of everyone here, I've probably worked and negotiated more community benefits more than anyone else. And I think that that would carry on as a good elected official representing District 6, and also collaborating with the council member, Omar Torres, our council member there, which also endorsed me, having a good working relationship with him and making sure that we can work together, because District 6 is right next to District 3, and we want to make sure that some of that trickles down into our district as well.
Thank you. So this is our final question about housing. In 2023, Mayor Mahan controversially proposed drastically changing the allocation of Measure E funds to build short-term shelters, potentially jeopardizing many of our communities' long-term permanent housing plans. How will you address the housing crisis in a way that ensures the long-term sustainability of housing for all, and not just addressing the crisis with short-term fixes? The second seat will answer first.
These are fantastic questions. So I think that we have to be able to create housing at every economic model itself. So when I look at the system across, for instance, preventing homelessness or preventing people from falling into that cycle itself, oftentimes an injection of funds can help prevent that. Here's one of the things that frustrates me the most about the county of Santa Clara. We have 10,000 people on the street right now in the county of Santa Clara, and of that, 3,446 of them are United States veterans. So what we have is an opportunity to be able to associate different types of funds from the VA to CalVet to be able to look at 30% of the problem. One of the things that we look at right now is we're trying to solve this. We're trying to create economic viability within the city, while at the same time that blight and homelessness is continuing to reduce economic viability. If we can look at external sources to provide injection of funds, we can solve 30% of the challenge overnight, right? And be able to work towards a solution that creates a lot more bespoke type model for the other remaining members of the community itself. Thank you.
So, addressing the housing crisis, no one person is an expert here and can fix it all. Otherwise, it would be fixed. I'm sure everybody can agree on that. However, we definitely need to have state partners across the board, not just the city, the county, the senators, and across the board, all the way to the U.S. Federal Congressman. I'm the only one that's actually worked on state legislation and partnering with them to push policy to build more affordable housing, not just in San Jose, but across the state of California. So we definitely need to build more, but we also have to build consciously when we get the community's input too. One of the things that always gets us into a tidbit with the community is when they don't know what's coming in. So we want to make sure that when we're building something, that we include the community and all the stakeholders. And we also want to be good neighbors. For me, also making sure that we have programs available to bring in more of the community that would want to actually participate and eventually live in said affordable homes.
95%. There are two housing solutions that the county finds has 95% effectiveness in keeping people in their homes. I talked about one of them earlier, eviction diversion and homeless prevention. The other is permanent supportive housing, building housing with mental health and case management services in the actual building where formerly homeless people live. Those are the solutions that will stretch your tax dollars the farthest and create the best long-term solution to this plan. I am very focused on those solutions. I will be pushing for them as both a housing commissioner and the executive director of Catalyze SV. I gave public testimony last year to the city council advocating for Measure E to be continually focused on what we think voters wanted when they passed it in 2020, which is long-term solutions to housing. That is what we need to focus our tax dollars on. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Ihoma Mazzernini. I'm a part of the River Church community and PACT. We will now move on to police accountability and reimagining public safety. Since the murder of George Floyd, many community members have been calling for a redefining and reimagining of public safety. Our first question has 3 parts. Number 1, how do you define public safety? Number 2, how do you believe we can best achieve safety for our community? And 3, can you point to any studies or evidence that backs up your beliefs and views? The third seat will answer first.
So growing up, I thought police officers were there to protect and serve. So that is my definition of what I think, because that's what we were taught to believe. As a person of color, with all the things that have happened throughout the last couple of decades, now that we have cameras, a lot of the community members that I speak with have hesitation because now they don't call 911. They reserve it as a last resort. But I still believe that the officers are there to protect and serve everyone. How do we believe we can best achieve safety in the community? We definitely need to work with the police. We need to build the community together. We need to include more people of color in the police. We need to make sure that we have good relationships with them. I think over the last couple of decades especially, and holding them accountable, like truly holding them accountable, just like they hold us. We need to be good citizens, and so do the police. And I think that the majority of both sides actually want the same thing.
I define public safety as everyone in our community feels safe. And I think the best way we achieve safety is what some of you, how many have heard the term more eyes on the street? Eyes on the street are community members who are out in our communities watching out for their neighbors. I like to say when the coffee shop opens at 6 a.m. and the bar and restaurant closes at midnight, there is activity in a neighborhood throughout the day. And there are lots of people around, lots of neighbors who make all of us feel safer. That's part of why I advocate so passionately for mixed-use development. It reminds me of the time that I got mugged at 6:45 on a Tuesday night in a totally residential neighborhood because there were no other people there at that exact moment. I've also advocated, and I hope we'll have a chance to talk about it today, my proposal to bring more community service officers into San Jose to help with public safety. And I'd love to go into that a little bit later if we have time. Thanks.
The metrics for success for defining public safety is ensuring that every member of our community has the same access to that and is treated equitably and fairly. Full stop. have members of our police force, right, engage, police the community that they engage in, right? So one of the models is bringing a lot of our law enforcement professionals back to the city of San Jose through some of the incentivization that we talked about earlier. I don't want police officers or public safety officers to commute to a town that they have to corral and then don't have to live in. The city of Chicago is a perfect example, right? One of the ideas was they brought all their police officers back to the city of Chicago, and that helped bring or increase responsible policing. I think that 40% of the calls that our police officers go on now do not require an armed response. I understand this while coming from a service that specific job was to do violence on behalf of the United States. Violence doesn't solve everything, nor the threat of violence to solve everything. So I think that ensuring that the right type model goes to the right type call, some of our MCATs and some of our community service officers have the opportunity to not exacerbate situations when they're on the scenes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Reverend Rowan Fairgrove. I'm with Poor People's Campaign and with PACT. In recent years, the city has engaged multiple consultants to study and provide reports and recommendations about the state of policing in San Jose. Some include the 2017 Racial Bias Study by the Center for Law and Human Behavior, which analyzed 800,000 plus reports of limited detention actions during traffic and pedestrian stops by SJPD. A 2021 study by MLF to research and recommend policing oversight and accountability models for San Jose, and another 2021 community-led city commission to research and recommend policing reforms, policing alternatives, and policing accountability. Which of these studies have you read? Of the recommendations that have not been implemented, which ones would you champion in your role in City Council? First seat will answer first.
Well, I know a lot of good work has been done. I haven't read the studies, but I've studied them. I've talked with people who have been involved in these commissions at the city level and heard their ideas. I have proposed a March 2025 study session at the City Council. I know that a lot of change happens through study sessions, and even though it might sound mundane, it is actually how council members learn a lot about issues and become moved on them. And so I think that would be incredibly important. I would like that study session to focus on these previous ideas to try to build more community support for them, because honestly, there isn't yet. And I think there needs to be. I hope I'll have a chance to talk a little bit later about my support for strengthening the independent police auditor. My time is running low, so I can't get into it as much as I'd like right this moment. But I do think the independent police auditor should be able to initiate investigations on their own.
To answer your question directly, I have not yet read these individual policies themselves, and I will. I appreciate the opportunity to continue the education. I think that what we have right now is, I did have an opportunity to attend a community study session in regards to redistricting of some of the police officers themselves to reassociate some of our youths. I think one of the things that I saw that was really good there was community collaboration to include a lot of the challenges that people were seeing in their current environment right now to advocate for new solutions for police officers. Really what I'd like to study inside the city of San Jose is the cycle that perpetuates both crime and violence, right? The idea of trying to stop the cycle that people are on currently when they feel trapped, when they feel like they can't resort to anything but crime or but violence. I think a lot of that has to do with our socioeconomic statuses and where people are at. I really think that there's a really good opportunity that we can champion with ideas for after-school programs or community engagement programs. I've seen this all across the world. When you have a young population who are exacerbated by a system and cannot reach economic viability, they reach towards the various activities to supplant their incomes themselves.
So I apologize, I have not read that study. I would love to take some extra time after the primary and read them all, whatever the outcome may be. That being said, I have spoken with some stakeholders and heard their concerns, especially about the independent police auditor and how they want to truly have somebody that's going to be fair in reviewing all the cases in a quick and expedited manner. I don't know, what was the other part? As far as championing the role, that would be making sure that we bring all the stakeholders together. I'd like to do it even before I become a council member, just so that I could be more acclimated and making sure that I could be a voice, especially for the marginalized community, which is something that I have worked with many other individuals across the board in the past, but this has not been something that I've had the time to read for the reports. I apologize.
In San Jose, Black and brown people are over-policed and over-incarcerated. The 2017 racial bias study referenced in the last question found that during vehicle stops, Black citizens were 9 times more likely than white citizens, and Hispanic citizens were 3.4 times more likely than white citizens to experience a field interview, which could include being handcuffed, being curb sat during a traffic stop. However, compared to white citizens, Black and Hispanic citizens were less likely to be issued a traffic citation following the stop. What policies will you propose and champion to address a long-term pervasive issue? Second seat will answer first.
Thank you. I'll answer your question with a story. One of the things that I did in my last 4 years inside of the service was reinvent Marine Corps education, because Marine Corps education was solely based off of the caste system. Where you start this world often dictates where you end up. And part of that, inside of the Department of Defense, that system was specifically exacerbated, specifically based on access to education. When you bring that same system back towards our local level, what happens oftentimes is where you start this world based off of economic viability, we're not just talking a racial issue, we're talking a class issue. Any members of our community that oftentimes come from a lower socioeconomic background are continually subjugated by different levels of classes themselves. What policies that we can promote to be able to champion this thing is to understand accountability and education. The way that we attack this inside of the Marine Corps was changing the root causes of the caste system itself, upending the model itself, so that what we could do is through education, through incorporation and collaboration, we could understand that every member of the service itself came from the same place. The same thing needs to happen in here in the city of San Jose.
So in my personal profession, I'm also an insurance agent. Many, unfortunately, of my clients are of color, and many of them were usually the ones that got cited for small infractions and always got cited even when, ironically, some of them said that they weren't speeding or they had a busted tail light. And then some of them, unfortunately, would even get deported because they would, for just a random traffic stop, be arrested. Something that the Caucasian clients of mine rarely heard of. So for me, a policy that we can implement with the police is making sure that they get trained adequately and making sure that they understand what they're actually doing out there. A lot of them, it's something that's been ingrained, unfortunately, in them, and I think we need to break that mold in the police, not just in the police, but across the board. There's got to be a change in the whole community and re-education of acceptance of everyone and making sure that we're fair. If somebody gets a broken headlight and the other person that they stop the next day doesn't get a ticket, there's something wrong. Is it with the headlight or with the officers that are pulling them over? I just have to question that.
The sad truth is that all human beings develop prejudices, but the good news is that we can work through them. We can work out of those prejudices through interactions with people who are different than us and through training. So I firmly believe that training in diversity, equity, and inclusion is incredibly important for law enforcement around race, socioeconomic status, gender, identity, sexual orientation. Those are areas where we need to really continue to focus on training for our officers. On my website, I have 6 priorities. I talk in priority number 2 about some of the reforms that I propose in law enforcement, Reverend, that you can hopefully go and take a look at more information based on what I've put out there that will respond to your questions. And it's incredibly important that we keep talking about these issues, because I know for me, I'm a man, a white man of a fair amount of privilege, and so I don't experience these issues in the same way in our community. That's why it's so important that I be an ally to those who do in supporting them in this really
Recently, we read text messages from Mark McNamara, the San Jose police officer who shot Kegon Green, and messages included incredibly violent and racist words, including, "I hate Black people." How will you hold police accountable for this kind of racist and violent behavior? The third seat will answer first.
I have a zero tolerance. Let me just be clear, a zero tolerance for hate. I think that we need to hold the chief accountable in making sure that that police officer is no longer a police officer. That's their last day. It's incredible to me that they want to be able to protect and serve us, but they already have the bias in them. I don't, there's no further answer on that, just zero tolerance. We should not have anybody, any type of first responder out there that is going to treat anyone unfairly by the hue of their skin or their immigration status or a language barrier or a socioeconomic background. So it's just it was embarrassing to me when I saw those texts. And everybody sees San Jose and it leads the charge for the rest of the United States. So I think that, if we get anybody that has texts or social media posts or anything like that, they're not fit to be an officer or anything else for me. Thank you.
I'm going to do something that political candidates don't often do. I'm not going to use all my time, and that's because I'm going to be very brief. I also have zero tolerance for this. I do not believe that someone who espouses those views and has those values should work for the city of San Jose. And I am glad that the chief let that person go. And I hope we will continue to figure out if there are any other people in our city who also have said or believe those things. I also don't think that they should be employees of our city.
I've seen hate firsthand all across the world, and I don't accept, nor will I ever accept any hate speech or ideologies that perseverate the idea of hate. The challenge that this brings is that, to me, this speaks to a culture of an organization that allows that to perpetuate. While I understand, coming from the federal government, that oftentimes people are other individuals inside of a larger culture itself, one of the things that the Department of Defense does immediately when something goes against our own values, specifically to the Marine Corps, honor, courage, and commitment, as soon as we go against those values, we hold them explicitly accountable for their actions. I've knocked 11,000 doors, and one of the things that I've heard is accountability and accessibility. So while maintaining an accessibility to me as a public servant, the idea of accountability of every member, not just the community, but of our government and people that are inside of that specifically. And then lastly, I think that as an organization, an independent auditor is required. I worked in the Department of Defense, the federal government. If you have someone who is not an independent auditor, you do not get an independent ITO. Thank you.
Kim Wheeler again. Our final question on policing is this. With the recent news of Chief Tony Mata's retirement, what is your view of the process of hiring a new chief? Should they be promoted from within or brought in from another city? What qualities do you hope to see in the chief of police? The first seat will answer first.
One of the benefits of my experience is I've been able to live in a lot of different cities in this country, and I feel that it is beneficial to look to other places for ideas and for staff. Our culture in San Jose can sometimes be a little provincial, and so I'm happy to have someone hired from within. I absolutely think we should also look at candidates who apply from other places. That's incredibly important, to have those eyes on people who can bring in new ideas and new perspectives. I think there should be an expansive and inclusive community engagement process where community groups should be involved in advising the city council and the city manager on people who would be good fits for the police chief. So I think a community engagement process is really key for something like this. I look for a police chief who can balance the different perspectives, who isn't just going to fall in line with one group or another, but is going to bring all groups to the table to have the conversation and to try to create a city that is safe for all of us.
So I've talked a lot about culture, and I think that's what a chief offers to a large organization, is that chief offers the opportunity to shape culture inside of their organization itself. The three qualities, to answer the question directly, or the qualities that I would look at in a police chief, I've already said: empathy, respect, and decency. If we act as our police officers act as public servants, as we ask our politicians to ask as public servants, and they run with those same values of empathy, respect, and decency in every situation that they encounter, if the new chief is able to personify those, that will perpetuate through the entirety of the system itself, and then we can create fundamental change. As far as the questions of being hiring inside or outside of the city, I think what I would like to do is I would like to leave that up to the professionals themselves to ensure. But at the same token, having a checks and balances model is ensuring that we're not going to perpetuate a potentially non-viable culture inside of our police department itself. Thank you.
So, the answer would be, I'd ideally like to hire within, but if the practices that we've been using are not the best ones, exploring hiring someone from outside the city would be good. That being said, whoever we hire, I'd like for it to be somebody that's not only empathetic, but culturally conscious of all the diverse communities in the city of San Jose. They need to be able to come in knowing exactly about the text that we just had and how you're going to go ahead and eliminate that. I'm really interested in making sure how in hearing their take on how they're going to change the whole model of these racist statements that were said, because even though there was one person that got caught sending the text, there was a lot of people that were receiving them, and so there's something off there. And they have to be able to work with all the different stakeholders as well. I'd like to hear my recommendations, but we also want somebody with a lot of leadership experience that can work with the city council and making sure that they can also work with the community really well.
Hello, my name is Lucila Ortiz. I'm the political director at Silicon Valley Rising. And our next question is about campaign finance reform. So many qualified candidates are not successful or decide not to run because of high importance of money and big donations in determining the outcomes of the elections. In order to remove some barriers for non-traditional candidates and encourage more direct voter outreach, would you support public financing of campaign? So this might look like in the short term, democracy vouchers program, like the one in Seattle, and in the long term, completely publicly funded elections. Sorry, second seat.
So I'm open to the exploration of that. And I think what I can answer right now is how hard it is as a candidate. And I respect the hell out of both of the two candidates that are sitting next to me right now, because I understand how hard this is. What you need to know is the County of Santa Clara recently changed their regulations in regards to how much an individual candidate can self-finance their own race. So before, what happened is there was a limit to $20,000 what a candidate could put into their own race. And what they did is on October 13th, they voted to rescind that. And now a candidate can fund their own campaign to as much as they want. That's anti-democratic. That's not what I fought for. What I fought for is for people like the people next to me walking down the streets and being able to talk to people, because it's a representative democracy and that's what this thing's supposed to be. The more money that we have from special interests from corporations into this election cycles themselves continue to have politicians bought and paid for. I'm talking faster because this is something I'm passionate about. I come to you today with no corporate donations to my campaign whatsoever, because I think that the idea of sweat equity matters. And I think the idea of going to your door matters more than money. It's about people. Elect public servants, not politicians. Thank you.
I also agree with Angelo here, except that I'd like to also say that I also choose not to accept money from stakeholders that are working against the will of the community members in our marginalized communities and our working class families. That is why I'm the only candidate that did not go to SCORE and seek their endorsement, because they have been working against most of the working class families' policies that we've been trying to pass in the city of San Jose. And while I respectfully met with them and told them they're an important stakeholder, I also told them that my ideas and my values do not align with them, and therefore I would not be accepting and doing the endorsement questionnaire for them. I think that's something that we also need to talk about, is who's actually investing in our campaigns and looking at those individuals, because right now, every single person here, we worked really hard to get the contributions that we had, and we're all going up against a candidate that's raised more than $200,000 by a lot of wealthy people that are not sitting possibly in this room. If you are, kudos to you. Thank you for listening.
I think our democracy is sacred, and I worry about it, as I think many of you do, the future of American democracy. I've also seen in this campaign the power of privilege, and I firmly believe that campaigns should be publicly financed. I love the idea of democracy dollars. I even talk about it on my website, and I talk about not only campaigns being publicly financed, I also talk about the idea of campaigns, gosh, I forgot my thought, but ranked choice voting, that's what it was. The idea that multiple people can participate in ranking candidates. I think it is more democratic. It costs taxpayers less money. There are some who argue that it is more inclusive of bringing younger folks and more folks of color into the process as candidates. And I think it creates a less divisive democracy in which candidates have to appeal to the better angels of our nature. So I am very, very favorable to campaign reforms that bring more people who don't look like me into the process so that they can represent us in the city.
Hello again, my name is Norma Calderon from San Juan Vianney, and the question is, a large coalition of community members of CBOS have been working on the campaign called Voz, Derecho y Voto, that means voice, right, and vote, which is focused on expanding voting rights to the undocumented community members. Do you support expanding voting rights to undocumented immigrants to vote in local elections? The third seat will be answered.
I actually have met with some of those individuals that are in that organization. I think it's important to consider, and I think it was implemented in San Francisco. I'd like to see how it's working in San Francisco, because I know that a lot of the undocumented community still chooses not to vote because they are fearful when they fill out their documentation status to finally become citizens, how they're going to be impacted because they actually voted. So ideally, it sounds great, but I want to make sure that our undocumented community is included and that they know that their vote isn't going to actually harm them when they decide to seek their legal status. That's why I have reservations about that, and I've also spoken with leaders in San Francisco that passed that policy. It's not something that I want to say I would want. I definitely would want that to happen, but I want to make sure that if it were to happen, that everybody in the community is actually understanding that they're going to be able to use their voice and not be dinged for it in the long run. So we have to be very careful with those policies. And I do encourage people that are actively engaged in our community and giving back to the community with their, like I said, sweat of their own brow to have a voice. But there are multiple ways that they can actually do it, like you're doing it right now, right? So let's explore that better and see how the model's working in San Francisco without them risking their document status when they decide to fill out the paperwork.
Throughout my career, I've tried to use my privilege to be an ally to those who may be from underserved or marginalized communities. It's part of why my organization and I fought so hard for the Berryessa flea market vendors, most of whom are Asian and Latino immigrants to this country who are fighting really hard to be able to stay here living and having a business at the Berryessa flea market. I will continue that work. And I'll be honest, when I first studied this proposal from Councilmember Carrasco a few years ago, I was skeptical about it. I didn't understand the past I didn't understand some of the other jurisdictions that do allow voting from undocumented folks, so I wasn't convinced. But as I always do, I read the evidence, I read the reports, and I was eventually convinced that this was the right thing to do, because we do need underserved, underrepresented communities to be part of our democracy, to bring them into the fold, to participate fully in the benefits and beauty of this country. And I will absolutely support this policy, although I will be looking for ways to make it work within the details. And I know that there will be some nuances to it, but I am supportive of it in broad strokes.
I love my father dearly. He never became a citizen of the United States. He was a green card holder to the day he died. I have a very big immigrant family. I cannot support legislation like this. I think that there's a natural pathway that people can take into citizenship status that is lined up, that offers the opportunity for advocacy and therefore your right to be able to become a citizen and exercise those rights. I've spent 21 years of my life defending the opportunity for free and fair elections, and I will continue to defend people to follow the right process to get into citizenship so that they can exercise those rights. My father made a conscious decision when he chose not to become a citizen that he could only sit on the sidelines and advocate to those who were to exercise those rights. So I'm sorry I cannot.
Thank you.
Hello, Lucila again with Silicon Valley Rising. There have been many discussions and predictions about budget deficits in the coming years. How do you plan to balance the budget without cutting essential services for our community? And the first seat will answer first.
One of the reasons I advocate so passionately for multi-story development is there's a study in San Jose that says about 4-story buildings and higher actually generate positive revenue for our city. And that kind of development, which we need so much more of, could actually help us in leaner budget years. So we need to be able to be supportive of buildings that bring in more revenue like that. I've also talked about the empty homes fee as a source of revenue for our city. I think hiring community service officers, we should do much more of that in our city. It so happens that community service officers cost us less than police officers, and yet they still perform vital functions of police by investigating crimes, patrolling neighborhoods, and writing reports. And they may be a more economical way of providing public safety. As I talked about, they are, just like neighbors, eyes on the street, and they may be able to deter crime just like all of us do when we see something going on. So those are a few ideas I have for raising revenue in our city.
I constantly hear the idea of cuts, and it really frustrates me. Because I think what happens is the city of San Jose, again, as an external person who's now come back home to look inside, I have this model where I continue to see that San Jose looks at issues as if they exist in silos. The idea right now is an increase in homelessness creates an increase in blight. An increase in blight creates an increase in crime. An increase in crime reduces an economic viability of a specific location. And a reduction in economic viability, in which how our city is charted, brings back the opportunity for police engagement and also money into the general fund. This is an entirely negative feedback loop. What I want to do is I want to focus on economic development in specific regions across the city and the district itself. San Carlos, the Alameda, right? We have these areas are ripe for the opportunity for economic development. If we spend a little to make a little money, we can invest in those organizations and those areas to create a vibrant economic powerhouse that then puts money into the general fund. Also, there's opportunities across the city for the deprivatization of specific public entities for the model of revenue recapture. And I'm very happy to talk about that here soon. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Lucila. I think that this idea of that we're going to be in a budget deficit and cutting services, we don't want to cut essential services, especially when it comes to our first responders. I also ran Measure T, which was a bond that not only repaved our streets, brought us our fire station 37 near the corner of Lincoln and Kirtner, also got us a new fire station that we're opening up in Fire Station 8 and a fireman's emergency response training center that's opening up in March. all of this was done with a bond where everybody in the city, by majority, voted to pay for it. It was an investment back in essential services. And I believe, because I walk most of San Jose doing this, that if we were to allocate another fund or push another bond, I think the majority of the city of San Jose, especially when it comes to essential services, would support that, and I think that would alleviate some of the costs. Thank you.
Hello again. This is the second to last question, and I just wanted to say thank you for all of the thoughtful responses that you all have provided so far. So San Jose sits on the unceded land of the Moecma and Temple Emanu-El people. Many local indigenous people have been working tirelessly to gain sovereignty to their ancestral lands. Do you support these movements, and would you commit to working with local indigenous people to further land back movements? The second seat will answer first.
These are some really tough questions, and I'm glad you guys are asking them. So I understand, and I will work to continue to remain empathetic to the plight of every single generation and every challenge within the city. Would I commit to working with local indigenous people? Yes. Would I commit to being able to have conversations to understand more of the background and the ideas of where this came from? Would I do that to further land back movements, to reappropriate lands back to? I cannot. I cannot say right now whether I can support that, but as it sits where it is now, I cannot secede any portions of the city of San Jose back to indigenous people. But I'm happy to have conversations in regards to understanding empathetic ways where we can move forward collaboratively with empathy, respect, and decency. I cannot secede any land back. Thank you.
So although my mom birthed me, I always say my Nana gave me life. I was born in O'Connor Hospital. The umbilical cord wrapped around my neck and couldn't breathe. And my Nana's actually the one that delivered me. She's a 4'7" Native American woman, and she was my mom that raised me, besides my mom that birthed me. My two uncles also raised me, 2 Korean War vets. They gave a lot for this country. They were born here in this country, and yet they were not able to actually get any of the benefits, even though everything that they gave back to the United States. I have met with the Moecma and indigenous community, and a lot of other indigenous communities would also like to have sovereignty, but unfortunately, it's being stalled. I would support them and meet with them. This is more of a federal question, and unfortunately, the city council can't push or help other than giving a voice and listening and advocating and working with not only the Moecma, but we should definitely look into recognizing the other indigenous tribes. But how we do that and how we go about helping them, that's not a conversation that I can answer in 1 minute. And it's definitely a conversation that would involve our congressional candidates and our congressional members of the House. Thank you.
I believe deeply in a multiracial community. It's how I build and maintain my friendships. It's how I do work as a community advocate and a nonprofit executive. I have a lot to learn about a lot of things. There are some policies you've heard me talk about today that I know a fair amount about. Unfortunately, this is one where I need to listen and learn and be taught and be led. And so I'm happy to have that conversation, but I don't want to give you platitudes or empty promises other than to say I'm here to listen and to learn and be led.
Hello everyone, I'm Reverend Sammy Evans. I'm the Civic Engagement Director for PACT. And this is our final question before your closing statements. So the Real Coalition, which is a network of nonprofit leaders committed to dismantling white supremacy culture and systemic racism, have created a non-racism campaign pledge and asks all candidates for local office in Santa Clara County, all staff, consultants, and volunteers working for a local candidate to take a pledge to not resort to racist dog whistle politics and other racist propaganda. Have you signed this pledge? And if not, will you commit to signing it today? The third seat will answer first.
Yes, I did, proudly. I think it's a great thing. We went through 2 other elections in the past. I can name one, District 8, and another, District 2, where there were some really horrendous things that were sent out to the general public. I think that we need to make sure that we hold those people accountable and we have clean elections where it's fair and equitable to everyone. I myself, as a Latina woman and mother that has lived here all her life, literally born in this district, can't imagine not signing it, and I don't know who wouldn't want to, other than people that would want to continue to support those ideas, and they definitely don't align with my values. Thank you.
Yes, I signed it. I encouraged my whole team to sign it, and I particularly like the point of the pledge that talks about not demonizing folks who have been homeless or unhoused. I do fear that that will come up in this campaign, in this election cycle, or in this race, I don't know, but I fear it greatly, and I would implore all of you at PACT to hold all of us candidates accountable, to really dig deep into that, because we know that so many of our unhoused neighbors are not there because they want to be there, that life has been challenging and difficult, and it is our job as their neighbors to find housing for them. And I don't believe that everyone in our city shares that perspective, and so we need to ask them to listen to that perspective, and I hope you'll push them, all the candidates in particular, to really look out for people and make sure that they're not demonizing those who have had difficult circumstances in life.
I've served all across the world to ensure every member of our community had equal access to upward mobility, access to education, access to health care, and a right to privacy. Unequivocally, yes, I would sign this document, because I don't think that racism or bigotry has any place in our community. And I think that which makes us different makes us better. But I'd like to take this opportunity to publicly advocate that if I were to make it through to the general itself, there's another opportunity that talks about independent expenditures, right? So independent expenditures are a tool that other candidates have the potential to use across the city that don't abide by these regulations and don't abide by these rules, who take an opportunity to challenge and to create the racist type tropes that we see all across the city. If I ever found out about an entity that would ever, an independent expenditure that would ever have anything to do with this, I would publicly denounce their support, because the idea of accountability and saying, I will not accept, nor will I tolerate anything that removes an opportunity towards moral character and empathy and respect and decency. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lydia and Alex, for confirming that you've already signed it. Angela, you'll see a QR code in here that will take you right to the form for you to sign. Thank you. And now we will go to our closing statements. For this section, you will each have 2 minutes. So timekeeper, 2 minutes for this. And our first seat will go first.
In my career, I have fought to be a powerful ally and advocate for underrepresented communities. As a white man, I studied race and African American studies at Vanderbilt, where I went to college. In 2005, I took a job working for a gay rights organization as a heterosexual man, advocating for LGBTQ equality in 12 southern states, where I helped LGBTQ folks and their allies tell their own personal stories about issues to try to advance equality and rights in our country. When I came back here to San Jose, I saw the housing crisis unfolding. My rent was raised 39% in 2.5 years, and yet I knew there were so many people struggling more than I was to be able to afford to live in this community. Meanwhile, dozens of my friends and loved ones have been pushed out of this valley because they could not find housing to rent or housing to buy. I started an organization, Catalyze SV, in my living room with 4 other community advocates, because we saw a community engagement process in our city that was broken. A community engagement process that research shows disproportionately privileges whiter, more well-off, single-family, older homeowners. And those folks are not the only people in this wonderful community we call home. We want everyone to have a voice in San Jose, to be able to impact decisions. It's part of why I got involved in supporting the Berryessa Flea Market Vendors Association. And call me a little cheesy, but I wanted to create a city in which everyone felt like they could become president of the United States, which is why I initiated the idea to have a street in our city named after Barack Obama, the first black president of this country, so that the kids of San Jose could see that they too could become president of this great nation. I will fight for equity in what has become the most unequal place in the country, to try to make it a place where everyone can afford, feel welcome, and call home. Thank you all for being here.
So I talk a lot about unity. I talk a lot about compromise and the idea of governance models. I've been called naive for believing in the power of unity by a lot of people inside of the district itself. But I won't back down, nor will I apologize, because I believe, and what my career has taught me, is the power of people. We come together, and we don't look for dominance models. I've heard people talk about the idea, pejoratively, that council is about counting to 6. I don't agree with that. I think council should count to 10. I think council should count to 11, right? Because the identification of when you're only counting to 6, the only thing you're interested in is power and not governance. And power through such this eye for an eye cycle on not unity and not governance together, what we will do is perpetuate this thing to our own demise. I've come home, as I mentioned, to build teams. I'm motivated by the fact that I lost my closest friend in Afghanistan in a little town called Nowzat. And what Matt did was Matt had the opportunity, and he had a choice. He had a choice to be able to save his own life and move on so that so that he can have the best opportunity for success. But Matt made a choice, and his choice was to stay. And his choice was to stay and fight so that his team, the members of his team of whom continue serving the country that I have served for 21 years. Let me come back home. Let me come back to life. I've been an Eagle Scout, a Boy Scout, an Eagle Scout. I've worked to be able to ensure that 12 years of night school at 2 hours a night to be able to get a master's degree from the University of Southern California, to come back home and continue to serve here as a substitute teacher in our unified school district. I believe in the power of people, and I've come along to make other people believe in themselves as well. Thank you.
I'm going to stand up so that everybody can see me. So, I mentioned to you I was born in this district. I'm raised in this district. I have my 3 beautiful children that I have the privilege of having with me live and play in the same streets that I grew up in the same neighborhoods that embraced me as a child. I always say I was raised by a village, and it truly was. It was the librarians that helped me how to read. It was the crossing guards that helped me cross the street and check up on me every single day when I would go to school. I love this city. I've served it since I can remember, because my father, that's one of the things that he instilled in us, in our family, is service and being good neighbors. Frankly, that's all I've ever done. Both in my professional and my personal background, that's all I've ever known. And I intend to continue to save that and encourage that in my own children. But I want to give back more than what I've had. I was in the hospital last year fighting for COVID, and I realized that my dream at 14 years old wasn't necessarily to serve and be an elected officer. It was to leave the city of San Jose better for the next generation. And the reality is that that is not happening right now. And as I sat there in the hospital, I realized my work is not done. And I fought myself to get out of that hospital bed. I fought myself to come back, and I realized we need to have positive change happen. And after a lot of convincing by a lot of important people, Councilmember Peter Ortiz, Councilmember Omar Torres, Supervisor Sylvia Arenas, all these other elected officials that have endorsed me, Assembly Member Ash Kalra, Evan Lowe, Alex Lee, even former Mayor Liccardo, are all behind me, because I'm able to bring 2 groups together that are able to work together, not the betterment of one group, but everyone. And I'm honored to continue to serve the city and have your support as well, so I can continue to serve my neighbors and continue to lead by example, not just for my children, but also for the next generation, the next Latinas that are coming up there behind me, the next marginalized community that can see a voice of one of their own, one of their working class people sitting on that dais, really representing them. Thank you.
Finally, I just want to thank all of you for coming today and listening. I hope that this was informative and that the candidates are able to hang out for a little bit to chat. You see each of them has a table set up. And then just finally, let's give a round of applause to all of you.